Hey everybody, this is Elle Nagy from the Unapologetic Women Empowerment Dynasty, and you're listening to the Unapologetic Women podcast, the show for women who choose to live their legacies unleashed, unlimited, and unapologetic. If this is a space you're curious about, visit unapologetic-women.com. Today we're talking about self-reflective leadership with Danna Beal. Danna is the author of the book, The Illuminated Workplace, Shining Light on Workplace Culture. She reveals the path to rebuilding relationships and ending the fear, pain, and suffering in the workplace. With a master's in education, she is an international speaker, retreat leader, and writer with a compelling and critically important message for healing workplace culture. Her work brings forth the qualities of universal love, compassion, and trust for one another that is so badly needed in today's workplace and the world. Danna has spoken to over 500 businesses and conferences throughout the US and Canada. This is a really deeply introspective and thought-enhancing conversation. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Danna. So, darling, oh my goodness. So excited when you said yes to being on the podcast, first of all, because our conversation that we've had, which was the first conversation that we had, was so rich and beautiful, and I know I wanted more for myself, and I'm really grateful that we get to play together for the benefit of other women as well. So thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Well, thank you. And I'm honored that you wanted me to be on. And I think what you're doing is amazing for women and all relationships in the world, actually.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Oh, by the way, and I loved your article in the magazine. I'm going to pop the link in for anybody who's not read it, because I was just on the phone with my friend Amy, and we were going, and how cool was that article?
Oh, thank you. And it's true, and it's amazing, and it's synchronistic, and it's hard to believe it actually happened, but it taught me a lot.
Yeah, so for all of our listeners, when you see the line that stands out that says, he was my ex-husband too, that says it all, right?
Yes, it floored me.
Yeah, well, I think it would floor anybody. So, darling, let's jump straight in with the question of all questions that I always ask for every woman that comes onto the show. And that is, what does it mean for you to be an unapologetic woman?
Well, it's a great question, and there's so many good answers to that. But for me, I would say it means that I am free. I'm free to express myself. I'm free of old past conditioning. I'm free of, it's a personal freedom that I'm talking about, the freedom within. And so to be unapologetic is to be confident and authentic and free to speak and free to think and free to be.
Which for me wasn't an easy space to get to. So, and it was interesting because on the one hand, I am extraordinarily outspoken, and I always have been, even as a little girl, and got into so much trouble because of my outspokenness. Mm-hmm. And I feel that there came a time where I stopped being as outspoken about the things that really mattered. So as far as society was concerned, I was still a confident, outspoken woman because that's what I projected. And yet I know the reason I got depression was because I was suppressing my authentic self.
Yes.
So it's interesting for me because I think we see a lot of confident women in the world, but how much of that is their external confidence and how much of that is that true, integrated, authenticated confidence, which comes from the self?
Yes.
How has your experience been in getting to a space of liberating yourself to be authentic, free from the conditioning? Can you share a little bit about
I would love to. As you know, I work in the workplace, and I work on workplace culture and helping people have better relationships. Really, it's about honoring the spirit in ourselves and others that's residing beneath these self-identities, these self-created identities that are the ego. It's a face we wear. So what you're describing is the times that many times that we've all, as women, projected an image of confidence, but we've had our own inner doubts. And I think a lot of that comes from conditioning that we weren't even aware was happening. And some of it is a little more obvious. And I'll give you an example. I was a consultant working with a group of stockbrokers, and I was teaching them some skills in marketing, and they were all men. And in fact, as a consultant and as a speaker around the country, my audiences, because it's leadership and management type groups, have been more male than female. But I was working with this group that hired me, and one of the men told me I sounded condescending. And I thought, condescending? Would a man say that to another man? But it caused me to temper my language a little bit. And I later realized that the problem was not me. It was that men in general, in the business world, as much as it's progressing, they still have wanted to keep us at a certain level. And I think that's where, as females, we sometimes within have some doubts, not just men, but our society and in our different countries. And you and I live in countries where it's freer, but there are other countries where women are shrouded in their clothes and have no freedom and can't go to school. And so it's all a spectrum, but the same thing about women. It's the same thing about women having their own voice and their freedom.
And I'm wondering, because I love being a devil's advocate for everything, and because my experience with men has been so different from majority of women's experience with men. I've been very blessed in an experience of always being treated with great respect and equality, even in corporate with men. And when I hear all of the other women's experiences, I'm not discounting the experiences.
Right.
And I'm wondering, is it really that men are in general still wanting to keep women in a lower space in corporate? Or is there maybe, devil's advocate here, is there a way that we are actually misunderstanding communication because we are communicating so differently? And one of the things that I'm really playing with at the moment is masculine and feminine. And the understanding that we are equal and so different. I think that we are underplaying how different the masculine and the feminine is in today's society. And when we start really digging into that and honoring the differences between masculine and feminine, and acknowledge that we are living in a masculine built society, especially in business. Isn't it just that, well, they actually don't even know, because what they think they're communicating to us and what we are receiving from them is two different things.
Right.
And then as women, is this not the time where we get to evolve business by bringing in the feminine? But we can also then get to, and I think this is where entrepreneurship is so beautiful and so powerful, we get to start doing it differently. We get to start creating business that is more harmonious with our feminine energy, our feminine speech, our feminine emotions, without needing to change masculine business. Is it time for feminine business to start coming to the forefront then? Or are we recreating the masculine business as women at the moment?
Well, I think too often women, we're trying to follow the masculine lead. But when you say masculine and feminine, we all embrace and own some of those qualities, both male and female. And I don't mean to discount all men. No. I'm just saying that, and you're right, the communication, men and women are different, but we're also similar in many ways. And that it's the time of the female. Women have had to fight for everything, really. If you look, even the right to vote, to go to school, so many things that women have had to fight for. But now I think we can own our power and communicate from that loving space. That's why I think women will change the world, because we don't want to send our children to fight in wars. And I say that being the daughter of a pilot in World War II who was a POW and stood for freedom and fought for freedom. But I just want to see our world evolve into a better way, better relationships. And that's what my books are about, rebuilding relationships. Yeah. And so it's male and female. And some of my very, very best friends are men who own a little more of the feminine quality without sacrificing the masculine. Yes. And that's what we own more of the masculine, maybe perhaps than we did 50 years ago as females.
And I love how you say, let's stop the fights. Yes. And language is powerful. Mm-hmm. More powerful than most people realize. When we are fighting for our rights, we mm-hmm. are still fighting. Mm-hmm. We are still creating something to fight against. Mm-hmm. When we own our power and our rights, that's a very different energy. Right. And I'm especially inviting younger women into the conversation of, it's time to change the language. They still want to fight for their rights. They still want to exert themselves into the business world, instead of understanding that we as women get to evolve right now and attract the new world that we want by creating the new world from a space of absolute knowing of worth. There's no exertion, there's no resistance that needs to be created. I feel that this is the time where we get to return to ourselves, and in that we create from an attraction space rather than an exertion space. Yes. Do you feel that that is the change that is happening right now?
Yes, and what you're talking about is women just taking a stand from their authentic power, but not sacrificing our loving, nurturing side, because that's what we want to bring to the workplace. And my book really, and my talks that I've done, I'm not limited in experience. I've spoken to thousands of people all over the United States and Canada. Not New Zealand, but many countries. And it's not really, I don't even really talk this much about male, female, as much as I talk about just the qualities and traits that we want to bring to the workplace. And we want to bring trust, and we want to bring honor, and we want to bring compassion, and this competitive internal competition in the world that has, hurt both men and women, in the sense that they feel more like their numbers rather than what they can bring to the workplace. And that's changing, because daily I get notices and alerts and articles about workplace culture. And so even some of the most driven companies are recognizing that we have to honor the people. We have to look at the workplace culture. It isn't just about how do we get the numbers up. It's actually bringing, and another term for that, what we're talking about is emotional intelligence, where people are self-reflective and authentic, and they honor and respect each other, and they're civil. There's been too much fear in the workplace, and it can be disguised as false images, walking around. One of my quotes that often gets quoted is, beware of children dressed as powerful adults, and don't be beguiled. They're often pretending to be tough. And you and I are talking about being authentic and taking down some of these walls and these pretensions so that people can truly communicate and honor each other, whether you're male or female.
And that's the thing. And again, it's not about being disrespectful, but when we start studying the archetypes that are at play in the world today, and understanding the male-female psyche and the adult psyche versus the child psyche, we have to realize that due to various conditions and conditioning, majority of adults at the moment are playing in the child's archetype. They are operating from that, and it's not being disrespectful, and it's completely unintentional and unaware in most people, because
Unaware.
when we are in fear, we are operating from the child's psyche, not from the sovereign psyche.
Mhm.
And it's so beautiful. And one of the things that I really appreciate about you is that you are not encouraging people to leave the workplace, because I'm finding that the narrative at the moment is so anti-workplace that everybody must leave corporate and everybody must go and be entrepreneurs. And I'm kind of going,
Yeah.
but corporate is required in a healthy society. And how do we start making corporate healthy instead of making corporate the enemy and telling
Right.
everybody to be entrepreneurs, which at the end of the day then creates division again? Not that I'm
Mhm.
making entrepreneurship wrong.
Mhm.
But what makes you so passionate about staying within the corporate space and kind of going, no, no, the answer is not mass exodus.
No.
The answer is a reintegration and a reconnection within the
Right.
environment. Why did you make that decision for you?
Um, I first really became dedicated to doing this in 2000, the year 2000. And I realized as a consultant, I was hearing so much of the suffering that was going on in the workplace. In fact, sometimes I just couldn't believe it, that it could be that bad. And people would complain about their boss from hell and their insecurities. And these are the things they tell me: gossip, backbiting, nobody has their back, being exhausted, the 24/7 work week, never being able to get off email. And yet the pressure is so great because that's where people get their economic support, and at the same time, it can also be the most insecure place, but they get their economic security in the workplace. And I realized strongly that yes, it's great if you want to be an entrepreneur. And if that's your calling, I just so admire it. Well, I am, as an independent person. But when you are working in a workplace, it's not that easy to just leave. We need people who are willing to help change it, bring about change. And that's going to take feminine energy, often women, that will help bring about this kind of change.
Yes. Why you?
I I have had multiple careers or I should say multiple industries, and I had such a bird's eye view into so many different industries. And it's almost like my path led me to that, because I worked with insurance companies, hospitals, medical groups, physician practices. I worked with construction. I worked with insurance. I don't know if I said that, banks. I was a speaker for all these different corporations. I worked with CPAs and law firms, and it didn't matter where I go, the same problems existed. And I realized I have a way to help people understand what the conflict's about and what their fear is, and how they are all putting up the finger of blame. The biggest problem in the workplace is blame. But the other side of blame is being self-righteous. And so I help people unravel the drama. I help them be more empowered and not be in a defensive mode, and without blaming other people, standing up for yourself. So it's a process that I know works. I watch people in my audiences, light bulbs go on when they realize they aren't really a victim. They think they are, but when they realize they have the power, the freedom to choose how they react, how they feel, it's it's a liberation for them, but then they can be part of the change.
I think that is a critical thing that most people still miss. I hear a lot of victim speech as well in the world. And people often say, you don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. Not understanding the ultimate freedom is the freedom of interpretation, which impacts how you feel. Anybody can say anything, and you can take it up in various different ways. I find, though, that a lot of people would rather take it up the way that makes them feel self-righteous and what makes them feel good.
Yes.
Because a lot of the times what makes you feel good is releasing it, like letting it go, not letting it hook you, not letting it trigger you.
Not getting hooked. That's the.
And people seem to be resistant to that. They'd rather be self-righteous than be happy.
Well, if you think about it, being self-righteous is also an attack, because it's saying, I'm the good one, you're the bad. So when is the perpetrator perpetrated upon, or the victim? And when is the victim the perpetrated? I say it's an equal dynamic. You can't have a victim without somebody that you're blaming, and you can't blame somebody if they refuse to be the victim. So it breaks down. It's a two-way street.
I love this. I had this conversation with my partner the other day, and it was about bullies and victims in the school environment. And my point to him was, everybody is addressing the bully. Instead of, we need to start addressing the victimhood, right? We need to start addressing the victim. Because when you look at it, the bully becomes the victim every single time, because everybody then attacks the bully. It is a cycle.
It is a cycle.
The victim becomes the bully, and the bully becomes the victim. And people don't seem to get that. They still kind of go, no, 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 no. The bully is the one that, and I'm going, but you've just made him the victim. Like, in your behavior towards him, there's no breaking of the cycle, as long as you need somebody to be a victim and you need somebody to be a bully. It's one of the reasons I'm quite outspoken about the whole hero culture that we have created in society, because a hero needs drama. A hero needs problems. A hero needs villains and victims, quite frankly. So as long as we're perpetuating a hero culture in the world, we are perpetuating villains and victims.
Right. I totally agree. And I use the example in all my talks based on my books, that the workplace is like a stage, or any relationship is like a stage. And the ego is the actor. And the ego, I'll use the example of the workplace, but it can apply to personal relationships, spouses, families. It's all the same thing. But the person goes to work and they believe they're the star of the drama. And they watch all the people that are cast in their drama all day from the point of view of they are the star. What they don't realize is everybody else in the workplace thinks they're the star. So they don't have the same script for you, and you don't have the same script for them. And we're all coming from the lens or our opinions of how we see the workplace or our relationship. And when we can start to truly listen, and I'm thinking more on one-on-one, we need to be able to hear each other before we attack. And we need to not get hooked before we have a chance to say our side of it without blame. And so this goes on all day, every day, everywhere. And it's going to take people willing to understand it, like you just described, and be the ones that can start the chain of breaking down, or the cycle, and refusing to play that game.
There's that, and there is the for me personally, I found it took me a long time to get to a space of being so secure in myself, so safe in myself, that I started becoming more interested in listening to people, because I wanted to understand the person rather than having to understand their point of view, so that I could defend or change or be changed by their belief system.
Yes.
I became more curious about loving and knowing people than loving and knowing beliefs. Like,
it's beautiful. That's what we all,
It's just a belief. Any belief can be changed, any belief can be grown.
Yeah.
And majority of beliefs that we are taught to have really create a lot of suffering in people, which is interesting that we are so defensive of our beliefs when I'm like,
Well, it's our identity. We believe we are who we believe all our beliefs are. That's why it's hard for people to give up their beliefs, because they think that's who they are. But we're not beliefs. We are human beings and we probably have many points of view, and having the willingness to listen to other points of view and be willing to change our points of view, to be open, is really the secret to all of it. And I compare it to a teenager. Think of a teenager that they know everything and they fight with their parents and they think you're so stupid as a parent, you don't know anything. Well, some people never get past that stage. They want to prove they're right. They don't want to listen to anything. So the willingness to put down your own walls, take down your guns, figuratively. I don't really, well, sometimes it is guns, yeah. But in general, to just allow somebody else to express themselves and be willing to listen. And then if you are hooked, I do have a few steps. If you do feel that coming up, that feeling to fight or flight or attack, any of those kinds of feelings come up in a conversation or a fight even with a spouse, because it happens all the time. If we can stop and take a breath to break the reaction of the egoist and jump in and attack back, if we can pause and take a deep breath, and then I think the secret is to say to yourself something really calming, like whatever is meaningful for you. But for me, it's that I am free, and I am loving, and I am calm, and I can take that space, and then we can have a conversation, and it diffuses the attacking back and forth if you can do that. In the heat of the moment, that's when it's the hardest.
It is, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. I feel like, and it's interesting for me when you were talking about the teenagers and what I'm witnessing in the world and how much power the young people have been given with social media, which takes me back to the psyche of the adults we were talking about earlier, and the fact that majority are in the child archetype psychologically. And society is starting to reflect that back to us, how so much power is within the mind and the hands of children right now in society, which then brings me to understand that now more than ever before, it's critical for mature men and women to start standing firm in their power and to start having greater influence and impact in the world than what they are at the moment, because it just seems to me a lot of the mature adults are sitting down or keeping quiet or
well, sometimes people feel it's better to remain silent and not cause any waves, but if people don't take a stand, then, well, there's so many quotes about being silent is like helping accomplish just the opposite of what you're being silent about.
And that's the thing. And, I'm often criticized and critiqued and said, I'm so outspoken about things that I should not be outspoken about. And the thing is, it's not because I'm making other people wrong, but I think that if we don't start speaking out and going, well, I have wisdom to share because I've learned some consequences and I can see the ripple effects of choices being made. And for me, it's not about me, and it might not impact me directly. But doesn't it, when we start seeing that if we're all connected, consciousness is connected.
Right. Totally.
Everything is a ripple effect. How can we not actually, speak out when we start seeing, okay, guys, this is going to an interesting direction that it's going to take us a long time to get back from. And the further we get away from divine love, the further away we get from harmony, from collaboration, from connection, from all of those things, we'll eventually always get back, but it's going to take us so much longer.
Right. Right.
What is something that you would want to say to the women listening? Because I think especially older women are still hiding a lot. Their wisdom, they're still not sharing it because majority of
Hmm.
our wisdom is not what's considered as politically correct at these times.
Right.
A lot of our wisdom is maybe dismissed by the younger generation. You don't know what you're talking about because it's the same old story in every generation, right?
Right.
You
Right.
don't understand. It's different for us now.
Yes.
But how would you actually encourage women who are listening at the moment to go, well, actually, we do have wisdom to share?
Yes.
How would you encourage these women to start sharing their wisdom in a way that is powerful but feels safe to them?
Yes. Well, what I would do is suggest to these women, any women that are listening, to look at what are your fears that are holding you back. And if you can identify your fears and recognize those are again beliefs. They are misguided beliefs that are saying your voice isn't worthy of being spoken and taking a stand. And that's a process I've been on my whole life, and I'm sure you are too. Recognizing the places, the blocks where I have been either suppressing myself or have felt not heard. And we need women right now and strong men that have their feminine, they can own their feminine energy, the compassion and the love. My leadership model is called the Be Love model. And it's about coming from love. It's the most powerful source. It's the power. What it comes down to is trusting that we really are, we're a soul occupying a body, but we're part of a greater consciousness. And we're here to express. And if we don't express it, somebody else is going to have to. But the more we do, the more we're helping change the world. In fact, that's how you do change the world, one at a time.
It's about being, it's not about doing.
Exactly.
And change and evolution is so natural. And I feel like a lot of the times we are taught that we have to force it, that we have to instigate it, that we have to push it, which only creates more resistance and then makes the whole process so much harder and so much longer. Whereas we just allow evolution to be by constantly being in tune with ourselves. So then one of the things that I'm constantly asking myself is, am I being my most evolved self right now? And I can pull bullshit on myself. I know when I'm not, and I have a great compassion and sense of humor about it.
Yeah. Yes.
It took me a long time to get, by the way. But I have great compassion and a sense of humor about my human experience. And
sense of humor is good.
yes, I no longer berate myself for not being perfect and not being my most evolved self, and I should know better by now. Like,
Yes.
I'm having a day and I'm having a moment and I'm good
Yeah.
with that. Like I'm really good with that. But it is about having that self-awareness, right? And
Yes.
from that self-awareness, just a willingness to be a little bit more of my evolved self and
Yes.
understanding that is enough. That is what is evolving humanity and what's impacting consciousness instead of thinking that we have to change the world. And I keep coming back to this lately, that saying of be the change that you want to see in the world. I think that we are not delving deep enough into understanding what was being said. Be the change you want to see in the world is stop trying to change the world. Be who you want to be and allow the world to respond to you, to form around you. Do you think that maybe we just don't trust that that is enough? Do you think that it's too quiet and graceful a process in a world that's all about fanfare and stages and
Exactly. There's so much pageantry and drama, and it's like everybody wants to be famous. It doesn't even matter what it's for, and all the drama kind of drowns out some of the quiet qualities of true authentic power, and people that, like you said, as each one of us can be more who we are. And I call that requires the courage. It takes great courage to face your own inner fears, your own inner demons, or your fears of weakness. And that's the path everybody is needs to take at some point or another, and especially if they're in a leadership position and they're going to be working with other people, because it's the number one step in being a good leader is self-reflection and facing our own fears and weaknesses. Otherwise, we're putting on airs and we're blocking, and we're being imposters.
And this is why I feel so many people talk about imposter syndrome, and I am not a huge fan of these labels. I think a lot of the times people start living their labels. I think a lot of the times people start labeling for the sake of labeling as a way of avoiding true self-reflection. I think it's easier to just go, oh, I have imposter syndrome, than to go, why do I feel like an imposter? And why do I choose to continue to feel like an imposter? Or do I actually decide to stop feeling like an imposter and figure out who I am authentically? And then how do I align to that day by day by day?
Yes, and live it.
Time. I feel like imposter syndrome is a cop-out. I think it's one of those labels that are given to people and then they do nothing with it.
Well, even titles on an organizational chart are labels. It doesn't really define leadership. Some of the greatest leaders don't have the titles, but by their authentic power and their ability to communicate, they can affect a lot of change in their corporate work, even if they don't have the formal title.
I think that one of the best books I read was Robin Sharma's A Leader with No Title. A Leader with No Title.
I haven't read that one.
I read it probably 15 years ago, if not more. And that really struck me and brought to my mind a complete wiping out of the hierarchy in corporates. And understanding that it is a level playing field, and that every single person, whether you are the CEO or the cleaner in the company, can choose to be a leader in your life, in your position, in your department. Yes. And that leadership really does have nothing to do with titles. And I'm one of those people that cheekily say, if you have to go on a leadership course, you're not a leader, because a leader is somebody who chooses to embody the energy of a leader, not in a position, not in a company, but in life. And that brings with it really deep self-understanding. It brings with it really deep compassion for people. It brings with it really deep connection to vision for yourself, for your life, for the world that you are choosing to create, and all the little aspects within that. Because what I'm finding is so many people, and again, it is where society is at. You know, I sound really harsh about this, but leadership being taught to people is fellowship, because leaders are being taught how to speak, how to dress, how to do this in order for them
you just read my recent article in another magazine. That's what I talked about.
So we're not creating leaders, we're creating followers. And
yes,
you can see the ones who've been on the certain leadership courses. We are losing originality. I'm so craving originality in society at the moment. Like the artistry of society is dying.
Yeah. Yes.
All we have is mass replication and duplication.
Right.
for the most part, I can go on to any platform and it's all the same. It all looks the same. It all sounds the same. It all reads the same. It all speaks the same.
You know,
How do we
it's
break the
interesting.
mold?
It's so interesting. I know. And it's interesting that you brought that up, because I was just explaining and discussing this with somebody that when we're in the present and trust in the unknown, and we're willing to just go from our authentic base, we can invite new things into our lives, and it invites imagination. But if all we do is do what we already know, then we're just going to get more of what we know. But imagination comes from the wellspring of creativity itself, and that is in the present time, and it's in trusting that it will evolve and come about.
Which is
Does that make
exactly
sense?
which is exactly why I believe it's the feminine, and that's why I believe that self-leadership is a feminine energy, because it is that willingness to play in the unknown, the willingness to play
Yes.
in the realm of imagination, the willing of playing in the realm of creating something that's never been created before. And it takes, oh my God, so much willingness to look the fool, to sound the fool,
Yes.
to not be praised, to not achieve, the
Yes.
willingness to create for the enjoyment of the creation process, not the outcome.
Yes.
And we are so judged in today's outcome obsessed society, result obsessed society,
Yes.
which is why a lot of people are high achievers and really dissatisfied, really unsatisfied.
It's never enough. It's never enough.
Achievement can never be enough.
No, and material things can never be enough, and titles and all the things that people are seeking, when they get it, it's not enough. And then you die. And at the end, what are you going to remember? All the studies show that what matters at the end of your life are the relationships and the love that you had in your life. It's not all your accomplishments. It's about people. And that's a quality that women innately seem to know for the most part. And that's what we need to bring to the world.
Absolutely.
Fearlessly.
Fearlessly. And why not? And I feel like it's starting to happen. And I'm so deeply grateful for where I'm finding myself in my life, because I seem to be attracting more of those women to me, which is fantastic and heartwarming, and gives me so much hope for the world, and so much faith in womanhood again.
Yeah.
We've got a long way to go, but it's starting, right? And so for me, that is such an amazing time for us to be alive in. On this note, because I'm also aware of the time, what do you take an unapologetic stance for in the world?
There's so many things. I want to put it in the right, most encapsulating answer, but I want everyone to find the deep love that's in their heart and have the freedom and the courage to express that and be compassionate for the fellow human beings on this planet, because we need love and compassion more than ever before.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to add to that, love and compassion does not mean tolerance.
No.
I feel sometimes people get really confused with that and think that, well, if I love somebody, if I have compassion for something, I must tolerate the work.
Or be codependent.
Yes, and that's not what we're talking about, right? Love and compassion is love and compassion unconditionally, but with taking a stance for the best in a person and the best in this world and the best that we have to.
Yes, and that can even mean, love can even mean being, saying no can be the most loving thing to do, not to validate someone else's insane behavior.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I think that is something that needs to be heard in today's world. Everywhere.
But you and I could go on and on, but I see now that we are very similar in our philosophies and our worldviews.
Well, and I feel like it's because we allow ourselves to be open to so many philosophies and worldviews. And because I'm completely unattached always to my own beliefs and my own experiences.
Right.
And I also get to have critical thinking around things. So I think that's one of the beautiful things of where I'm in my life at the moment. I don't just look at one thing, and I feel like people are afraid to look at the good and the bad of everything. Anything that's created has good and bad. Bad, in inverted commas, because that's how things are created. That's why creation is ever evolving, is because every creation has got two offsprings. It has the desire fulfilled, and it creates contrast again. And the contrast births a new desire. Something gets created, there's the desire fulfilled, and there's a new contrast.
Yes.
And it's as though people are not willing to look at the contrast. They're scared to look at the contrast. And so, and they're scared to speak into the contrast. They only want to see the good and the bright side. And I'm like, but that's ignorant, and it's still fear-based.
Yeah.
When you release the fear and you're willing to see everything, that's when you can really start creating powerfully and live unafraid and love unafraid, because nothing has power over you, because there is always both sides.
Yes. And what you're just describing is what I call reuniting with our soul and understanding who we really are, a creation of love, and having the courage to do and face all of that, both the negative and the positive, and then keep going forward to create a better world, create what inspires you. We each have something we're here to offer.
We do. Darling, how do women get hold of you? If somebody's listening to this podcast today and they go, oh, I really love what Danna's saying, what is the best way for them to get hold of you?
Well, I have a website that's dannabeal.com, and Danna has two N's. And I wrote a book called The Illuminated Workplace, and you can find that on Amazon. In fact, tomorrow the Audible book's coming out for my book, or they can email me, but my email is just Danna, DANNA at Danna Beal, DANNABEAL.com. So that would be great.
Thank you so much. And thank you. This was an amazing conversation, and like we could go on forever.
Yes.
So I am looking forward to the next conversation, because we both know this won't be the last one.
Yes.
Yes. I'm looking forward to your next article, because I know that there will be one in the next magazine, which is
there will be.
And to all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you are taking away from this just how powerful a woman you are, and how critical it is at this time for you to start sharing your wisdom. Start sharing your wisdom with love and compassion, because when we choose to be the change we want to see, ladies, that is enough. We don't have to change the world. We just have to be the world we want to live in, and allow that to be enough. So thank you so much for joining us. We can't wait to see you again next week for another riveting, rich conversation. And until then, don't forget, we get to live our legacies unleashed, unlimited, and unapologetic. Have an amazing day further. Cheers. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at The Unapologetic Woman, and on LinkedIn at Elle Nagy. And if you're interested in experiencing the Unapologetic Woman Friendwork Soiree, book in for our next open meeting at unapologetic-women.as.me/unapologetic. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.